question or
Well, yeah, what else were you thinking?
comment?
Okay, sure. Okay, question then.
What creates fear?
Fear?
Yeah.
Well, there are lots of things. Failing a class.
So where does like the feeling of fear stem from?
Ah, I think because we're the sort of animals that are very, very future oriented. And whenever you make plans for the future, you have no choice but to expect certain outcomes. And when those outcomes are not met, naturally fear overcomes you. But before you actually become fearful, there is slight irritation that happens, frustration that happens, anxiety that happens. And, it's kind of like the election night. We were all sitting home, the kids were doing piano, and my wife and I are glued to the TV. So Harris is like 12 and Trump is 70. Hello, Kendra. Forgive me, I forgot to bring the forms. And then Harris becomes like 15 and Trump goes to 70 and then 80 and then 90 and Harris is at 20 and Trump is over 100. Because, first, we have some knowledge of and experience with Trump. For someone like me, at least, if I was to be honest, he doesn't make me feel all that great. The way he speaks as an 80-year-old man, the way he insults people and throws jab at them in the most demeaning of and infantile of ways. That in itself, again, that goes in the background of who and what I am in my culture. That's 80-year-old people should just behave a bit better. And then how he handled the pandemic, all the people dying, and ultimately his response is, it is what it is, So, and he creates inside you, if you had any love for this man, at least if I did, which I didn't, but if I did, that love would go away very quickly and be replaced by dislike. And then his language and his conduct would get rid of dislike to just, every time you see him, you're just angry because you know that something stupid is going to come out of his mouth. And then after a while, that anger is going to go away and you just hate anything that is related to Trump. And so it comes this idea that in a couple of years, you're going to have an election, okay? Now, I don't know who Joe Biden is because VPs are usually in the background. They're in the dark. You don't really see them. You don't hear much about them. You don't really know who they are, what they are. And so all you know is that there is this tremendous negative passion you have towards Trump. But now there's an option. There's Joe Biden, or maybe there's Kamala Harris, okay? And since the election was just a couple nights ago, what happens is you want this woman to win for a couple of reasons. First, America has always had male presidents, and in some ways it's been okay, but these days it hasn't gone too well. Also, we've only had one person of color in the White House. It wouldn't be bad to kind of make it a bit more colorful. So Kamala is, first she's Black and Indian, then it's a woman. And there is something very pleasant about her. I don't know her personally, but she's very different than Trump. And so all of a sudden, inherently, this bias kicks in, and you say, I wouldn't mind if she gets in. In fact, it would be much better. The way she speaks, the way she smiles, the way she talks, her tone of voice. And all of a sudden, an expectation grows inside you. And when you expect something, there's a great amount of hope and dreams that are related to it. I'm really looking forward to this woman occupying the White House. Add to it the fact that Joe Biden made a great sacrifice, overcoming pride and saying, I'm stepping out because of my age, because of this, because of that. And so you have this hope that this woman will eventually get elected. So this hope creates a good amount of expectation. Now, depending on how involved you're in politics, depending on, for someone like him, it's a completely different story. He's black, Kamala is black. I mean, that in itself, if the guy was Persian, I would feel the same way, you know. But to some extent, I can relate because of being an immigrant, because being a person of color, having had to go to the INS to be fingerprinted, to be this, to be that. When I go, huh? Immigration, the office. You know, when things happened, we had to go there, we had to fill out a form, be fingerprinted so they can check our backgrounds, making sure, like Osama bin Laden is not my cousin, you know. And so in that sense, there is some relatability. And, you know, you see the movement created behind Harris, and your hope grows even more. You become more optimistic that, yes, she is going to win. And after all the awful things that this other guy has said about immigrants, you know, about Haitians, about blacks, especially blacks from Africa. And so his crudeness compared to someone's softness or perhaps optimism kind of forces you towards, you know, electing this woman into the office. And so as you're sitting watching the TV, you walk to the remote and you turn it on, and there is this great hopefulness inside you, and you expect the numbers for her to go up and the numbers for him to slightly go down, at least remain the same. But that doesn't happen. And then all of a sudden you're irritated by the numbers going up. Then you keep waiting for her numbers to go up, but it doesn't go up. And then you're frustrated. And then you become angry. Angry, how could people be so stupid? You know, it just makes no sense. It's like your mom keeps telling you, you know, that guy is no good for you. And, you know, you try to argue with her as if you want to make your mom see what a great man you're with, when in fact she sees you black and blue on a daily basis, you know. You're just abusive. And every time you're playing with your phone and your mom asks, so honey, who's calling you? Oh, it's Joe. She becomes irritated. What the hell are you talking to Joe? Didn't we have like this talk yesterday? And so even though she was hoping to have a, you know, another chat with you about how poisonous Joe is for you and your life, there comes a point where you just show yourself to be a certain way that disappoints her. And then, you know, you come out of your mother. You belong to her, you're part of her. A good amount of who she is really you. And then your behavior just makes her angry, disgusted. And so not are you angry at Trump, you're also angry at those who voted for him. And then you begin to question the integrity of human intellect, the capacity to reflect, to examine. And that even makes you more angry. You know, that for some strange reason, people just have a tendency of forgetting things far too quickly and far too easily. And it's like all the awful things that people say, it no longer matters anymore. And you just become so callous. You know, add to it the fact that it even makes you more angry that 400 million people in America, 52% of Americans have the education of a fifth grader. That doesn't make any sense. You know. And so, as you realize his numbers are going up, and even Pennsylvania, North Carolina, educated people, they vote for him. And then you have to question the function of education, its value. You know, that, and maybe we're just thinking this way because we live in California. I'm not really quite sure. You know, you get yourself to a place, or the forces out there push you into a place where you even doubt your own sanity. Maybe you're the one who's crazy, you know. And then as his numbers go up, you know, you realize that you're behaving a little weird now. You shout at your daughter, play the piano a little softer. I don't want to hear it. And then, your son is breaking a table or something. You say, God damn it, shut your mouth. Now, you don't usually talk this way, but you realize that what you expected is not coming true. And you're slowly becoming fearful. And so without that expectation, and remember, you expect because you care. You took a shower, I'm hoping, you changed your clothes, hoping that, not hoping, business as usual. Tuesday, Thursday, 9 to 10:15, you come to class. That's what you usually expect. And imagine there was a note on the door, sorry, class is canceled. And you had to come all the way from Washington. So fear is always the outcome of expectation. And once or twice when your expectations are not met, then something happens to your ability to trust that if, for example, we have canceled class 5 or 6 or 7 times throughout the semester, you say, okay, should I text him first before going there? Should I call him, email him? Do I really want to go all the way there and then see this note on the door? And now what happens is the stability you once thought you had is now completely removed because you've been betrayed a few times. Now what you have is 50%, I should go, 50%, I fear he's not going to be there. I don't know if you have a boyfriend. I hope not. I pray not. But if you do, what usually happens is, men are, for the most part, stupid in many ways. And in some ways, she's very lucky because she doesn't go out with men, she goes out with women. They're much more stable. Not you. Well, they used to be, not anymore. But, so you expect this thing to go smoothly, and then there are some hiccups, and then something happens to your expectations. And remember, inside every expectation, which is in the future, there are hopes, there are dreams, and you begin to lose them little by little. They're not as clear. And then you say, do I really want to stay with this guy? You begin to doubt. And then there comes a point where you have a good amount of regret, which is, I fear I've made the wrong choice. And so every time you go out with him, even though you want to be with him, you're fearful of wasting more time. It's good. Fear is really, really good. It's paralyzing in some ways, but it's good. Is it? Dagan? Anything? You have nice hair. Sarah, don't you think he's got nice hair? It's fluffy. It's clean. Anyways. Olivia, anything? Kendra? Wait, Terry?
Nothing yet.
Artists.
I think it was Leonardo da Vinci, or was it Leonardo DiCaprio? Or one of them. Artists, at least initially when they're a novice craftsman, they're very moody. Artists are just sucky human beings to be around because they're always fall victim to moods, and they have sometimes intense mood swings, and they're usually gravitated towards the dark and the gloom, and that's what inspires them in many ways. Da Vinci he was a religious man. He had this great bent towards the esoteric tradition, things that are outside of the realm of tradition and orthodoxy. He had mentioned a few times that a true artist is he or she who, despite being in a foul mood, is able to summon up the courage and the skills and to create great art. Artists don't work on moods. They are inspired, truly, but they will themselves. They have skills. They have an agenda, and it's not really related to their moods. I have to be in a mood to play the piano. I have to be in the mood to sing. I have to be in the mood to write. I am an accidental artist. I have to wait and wait and wait and wait for some shift to take place on the inside, where I'm no longer thinking about tables and chairs and plates, where I sit to write something or paint something or play something or sing something. I mean, oftentimes I sit behind the microphone to sing, but my mood isn't right, and my voice, I can't feel the words, the Persian poems. And so 10 minutes later, I just shut off everything, I go about my way. I think as human beings go, we have no choice but to be profoundly expressive in all sorts of different ways. I think therapy is one way people express their pain. Sometimes you're frustrated and you have sex not because you love your companion, not because you want to be with your companion. It's the best way to express frustration, anger perhaps. Your very presence in this classroom is an indication that you care about your future, you care about your success, your happiness. You could go sit by the estuary and just watch the ducks, go back and forth. But your fear about your future, the way you express it is you come to class, you feel responsible, obligated, you sit, you listen, you raise your hand, you ask questions, and you do the essays. There are lots of things that we do. And because we are the sort of animals that, there are all these pressures, all these forces attacking us from all these different angles. Not only we have to suffer from the pressures of our own psychic tensions, the rights, the wrongs, the goods, the bads, what am I doing, the confusion, who am I, what am I, all that stuff. How should I make it work with my parents or this or that? You also have to deal with, what the hell do you do with abusive instructors like Amir Sabzavari? What do I do with students who don't listen? What do I do with people I don't like at my work? What do I do because the point is there are lots of what do I do's. And you ask these because pressures are being applied to you, imposed upon you, and somehow you have to take care of them. Otherwise you'll explode. One of the nice things about, I think, some traditional environments is that you have lots of friends. One friend is just for the gossip. Another friend is for politics. Another friend is for religion. Another friend is just go out and have a good time with them. So you have all these friends who occupy different branches of life, and every branch creates its own disaster. And you need a venting system. And those people provide those things for you. In a culture such as this, where people just live in this island all by themselves, you want somehow to express yourself, to vent the frustration. But, friendship requires time, trust, comfortability. And when the culture doesn't provide that for you, there is no place where you can go. It's like being constipated all the time. And when you're constipated, it means that when you eat food, you can't poop it out, and then you feel heavy, and then you just don't feel good about yourself. And even though sometimes you sit on the toilet and nothing comes out, it's like you really want to vent, express some pain to maybe someone out there. You open your mouth, but you say, should I not, should I not? And eventually you just turn around and go home. So we have no choice but to find things, anything. Maybe it's dancing, I don't really know, where you can kind of vent some of the frustrations created to you, not only by your own psychology, but also by just life itself. Artists, on the other hand, and I'm not talking about people like Vincent van Gogh. Sure, he writes well, maybe he thinks well, maybe he feels very intensely, but he's not really completely in charge of his own psychology, and maybe artists shouldn't be. Maybe their task is not to be like us, stable. Maybe their task is to be always in a hurricane of sorts, so that art can be generated through them. But I think artists also have an obligation, kind of like the Native Americans. Artists do two things. They either kind of affirm and reaffirm the tradition in which you are. In other words, if you look at the art of the medieval times, from, say, I don't know, the 4th century all the way just before the 13th or 14th or 15th, what you have is people don't know how to read, people don't know how to write. So when you go to church, the stained glasses of the churches, sculpture, painting, engravements on the church doors and walls, all these had to do with one thing. Since people can't read, and since we only give sermons on Sunday, why not just carve the story of the birth of Jesus? Just put them on the stained glasses or on the wall. So the function of art was, for the most part, was it propaganda? Absolutely, but all arts are propagandists, you know. So what happens is you impose people or expose people to a Christian philosophy, Christian theology and doctrine through the work of art. Nobody kind of, you know, and then you have in the 1970s in America where you create a very artistic movie called Jesus Christ Superstar. It's a movie, right? And it is a work of art, but this particular art stands back and says, you know what? We don't really have that much respect for Jesus anymore, so you stand on the outside and you begin to criticize the tradition that has been given people meaning for about 1,000 or 2 years. And to some extent, what happens is an artist stands back and says, what used to give us meaning no longer does. It's not worthy of respect anymore. Because look at our culture. Look at our movies. Look at the force and the power of pornography. Look at all these forces that are there to contaminate the human being, the human psyche, and destroy relationships. Why would anyone want to continuously worship the church or Jesus Christ when in fact it no longer has the power to baptize the human psyche? So you have artists who protect a tradition, and you have artists who look at the tradition and say, it's no longer doing anything. Let's criticize it. Let's examine it. Let's tell the public that what they're thinking really is no longer any good. You know, it's one of the things that's been happening in the Muslim world the past maybe couple of decades, where people are burning the Quran, where people are removing the veils, the hijab, the head coverings, where they're resisting some forces in the community where they say that girls need to stay home and just be housewives or just have babies. And they say, no, you know, women have the same intellectual prowess that men do, and they're worthy of going to school, being educated, being prime ministers, being this, being that. And so all of a sudden what you have is an artist who picks out verses from the Quran that demeans, is interpreted as demeaning to women, and brings them out and says, how could you continue to worship and call this book a sacred text when it talks about women in this way? You know, and they're all kind of artists that are very secular. You know, Puff Daddy was a secular artist. Eminem is a secular artist. Is it true that once in a while they talk about social issues? Absolutely. But are they, for the most part, secular, meaty, about money, about bling? Yeah. Do you want to put them in the same category as Da Vinci? I don't think so. And when you have a culture that says, well, you know, Eminem is an artist and Leonardo da Vinci is an artist, you know, Puff Daddy is an artist and Michael Jackson is an artist. I mean, these are just very, very different categories of artists. And they just need to be very, very far away from one another. But in general, artists are just weirdos. I mean, look at Aaron. You know, artists are moved by passion. He comes to class and he has to do MLA, font 12, you know, color of the font like black or blue or yellow. And he says, no, I'm an artist. I go where my passion goes, you know. And he submits an essay and it's blank. It has nothing on it. Oh, no, it's invisible ink. Pay close attention. That's one of the problems in modern art or abstract art. You have like this plain white canvas in a museum. And you say, well, what the hell is this? Well, it's art. Well, I don't see any paint on it. Well, it's art, but what is it supposed to say? That life is empty. And it fetches millions of dollars. That's just stupid. It's all Trump's fault. So, anybody else? Aaron, why is your hand up? You're not in a bad mood, but go ahead.
What is it about power that corrupts people?
Look at me, man. I make fun of people. I abuse people, exploit people, belittle them, force them to buy me coffee. So a couple of things about power. I think the first thing, which is a little subtle, is that there are temperaments. There are certain personality types that for some strange reason are immune to becoming intoxicated by power. They're just very passive. And if they have power, they exercise it very quietly. It's under the covers. But there are certain personality types that gravitate towards power. They like power. There's a guy whose name is Gurdjieff. He died some years ago, and he has a typology. It's called the Enneagram. 9 different personality types. There is this one personality type, number 8. And it's usually referred to people who have bossy temperaments. They like to push and shove people around. They're usually kind of like Trump, the way he's built, physically he's built. They're usually physically built, kind of very meaty, thick bones. They're somewhat animated. For some strange reason, how they survive life is by attracting a lot of people and pushing them around. And once they're done using and exploiting them, they dismiss them. Okay? So that's the first thing you need to understand. There are some temperaments then that just gravitate towards power. Number 2, you can't survive life without power. You need to have power to stay in this room for an hour and 15 minutes every Tuesday and Thursday. You have to summon up the will. You have to overcome boredom. You have to overcome shyness, to raise your hand and ask a question. And even if that question is, let's just say, stupid and other people are laughing, you need to have the power to be okay with that. So, and if you want a roof over your head, or if you have one, that's power. If you have food in your belly, that's power. If you're healthy, that's power. So no one can survive life without power. So I think what you may be referring to is this. You have power. And power gives you a good amount of stability, good amount of comfort, good amount of pleasure. Then you have this other aspect comes in, which is called lust. You look at all the things that power has given you and you like it. So you lust for more. Lust now turns into greed. And the reason why you have lust and the reason why you have greed is because of pride. You're very much at the very center and you want more of this. Okay. Now, a couple of things can happen. You can either gain more power through traditional means. It's like when I go to Home Depot, I buy like 20 bags of concrete, but before I put the concrete on this chair, what I do is I put lots of other things underneath or at the bottom. Then I put the concrete on the top. So all that the cashier can see are the bags of concrete. They have no idea. I have Milwaukee tools. I have Milwaukee saws. I have candies, Cokes, this and that underneath. And I pay like $200 for the concrete, But deep within, underneath all of that avalanche of garbage, there are thousands of dollars ready to come out when I get home. So some people exercise or their greed, their power, what they want by stealing. Some people, they become greedy and they have enough funds or enough power where they go and pay with the stuff and they go home. Now, do you have children? Don't ever, ever, ever have kids. But if you do, have them when you're young. But one of the things that kids usually do is that they exercise power. They scream, they shout, they throw things. And what you ought to do as a parent is that you domesticate that power that they have. When they scream, very gently go to them. Say, honey, don't scream. And you realize they don't understand reason. They don't understand rationality. That's not enough force to cause them to shut up. So you kind of gently tap them on the head. And they go like this, of course, and they go, you say, they scream some more. Then you apply more force. But then the screaming turns into crying. Make sure it just doesn't turn into wailing, because that's like a higher pitch than screaming. And there comes a point where they realize that, yes, they have power. They can scream if they don't get what they want. But they remember what happened to them last time they screamed a bit too much. They got spanked. And so sometimes what you need to do, if you're afraid of people getting too much power, make sure there is fear. Somehow you have to apply some fear to domesticate the power. If you happen to be someone like Trump, from a very, very young age having gotten his ways, and nothing has ever been balanced, I mean, it's a funny thing that tape that came out by some Entertainment Tonight or something, where he says that when you're like rich or celebrity, you can go to middle of the New York and grab people by the crotch. You can even shoot them and no one's going to do anything. And you would think that would kind of, make people question a little, wonder a little about who this man really is. I mean, why would anyone talk in this way? And of course, they chalked up as well as the locker room talk and this and that. But as the months and years pass by, you realize, no, that's just the way who he is. He's just this way. He's very crude. And the only way you could really tame the power that he has, not only as a person with a lot of money and real estate, but also as a president, that some force needs to come down. It has to be the Congress, or the Supreme Court justices, or someone who needs to come and say, listen, you can do A, B, C, D, but you got to do it in a different way, because this is just way too crude, But when it remains unchecked, what you have is then complete, domination, where you can do whatever it is that you please with your power. But can I tell you a story? I had a colleague here on this campus. She was a part-time instructor. She was married, mother of 3. And when you're part-time, your teaching schedule is really quite unsettling, because you have to beg for classes and you have no idea how the budget is going to work out. If the state is going to give the district any money, and that money will be kind of distributed equally amongst departments. And so when you're a part-time instructor, you have no idea how your next semester is going to be. Then she got together with the full-time instructor. They had a very good relationship, so much so that the full-time instructor went to the president and said, we need to open up a full-time position, and I need to be on the hiring committee. She got the job. she became a full-time instructor. But then you come to realize maybe you're not very good in the classroom. Maybe you realize that what teachers make is not enough to send 3 or 4 kids to college, to pay rent, put food on the table. And so she said, maybe I should just like become a dean. So if you're a part-time instructor, you make like $10,000 a year. If you're a full-time instructor, you make about $20,000 a year. If you become a dean, you make about $75,000 a year. That's a huge jump. Then, like a shark who smells blood and tastes a little blood and just comes up and devours you completely, says, well, now I've become a dean. I know the language a little bit. I've been around other deans. I know the buzzwords, and I have no choice but to work with the VP. Now, like a shark, you say, is there going to be a vice president position open? Because remember, when you're an instructor, you only have power over 20 people. When you become a dean, you have power not only over the budget that's given to your department or your division, you also have power over like 50 instructors. And then every instructor, let's just say, has 20 students. You have power over 100 students or 1,000 students. That's a lot of power. Add to it, the more you go up, the more money is going to come your way. Which means what? From a 1-bedroom, you go to a 2-bedroom. From a 2-bedroom, you go to a 4-bedroom with a backyard and a front yard. Okay? But there is something about human greed, and there is something about how power creates discontent. Discontent. آنکه بامش بیش برفش بیشتر. In Iran, we have flat roofs, at least the capital, Tehran. So wintertime, it would snow. And so the saying is, if you have a big house with a huge flat roof, it means that you have to go on the roof wintertime with like 5 shovels and throw the snow down. If you have a small roof, you just need 1 shovel and 10 minutes. Okay, so the bigger the roof, the more trouble. So as you become a dean, you have this eye towards becoming more, which is becoming a vice president. Now the salary for that, from 75, you jump to 120. Okay, remember you started at 10,000, now you're 120, which means that you're no longer living in a studio. Okay, so if your rent or your mortgage was like 2,000 a month, now it's 10,000 a month. Okay, now you enjoy the power, you enjoy the recognition. I mean, you are like celebrity on campus now. Anyone, any instructor has any needs, well, who they call? They have to call you. And then you realize, well, why the hell would I just want to be the president? I mean, the vice president. I mean, I hang out with the president, and what do they do? Nothing. They speak the same language, they do the same thing that we do. Why not apply for that position? Now, one of the things that usually happens is that once you get to the president position, you have no problem uprooting your family and moving them around. If you have kids, and your kids are in a certain school and they've cultivated some friendships, you go to them and say, honey, I just got a job in Arizona. They got to move. Why? You go. We don't want to go. You don't have a choice. And once you become the president, now you make about $275 a year. Then you say, well, why should I just be the president? Maybe I can be like a chancellor of sorts. Now when you become a chancellor, see that the current chancellor of Pearl District, she used to be the president of Laney College. But maybe she came to realize that Laney is just a sucky place to work at. So she went to Skyline or some forsaken college. And then the district opened up a position, chancellor. She applied and she got the job. Now what she has is she has power over 4 colleges, Alameda, Merritt, BCC, and Laney. In some way, she controls the budget. But the nice thing about Tamil is that she wants to make sure the campuses are clean, instructors are relatively okay, the classrooms are good. You know, that's a power that is always under check. But power is good. Power and discontent is bad. I mean, just always being greedy for more. That makes it worse. Yeah. So, is it? Olivia? Terry, yes. You guys need to finish Laney fast. Just take units. Just get out. Kendra, anything? Because I have nothing, and it's complete poverty here. If you don't, it's okay. I mean, I don't want to talk really. Uh-huh. Let me first tell you when I and where I heard that particular saying. I had a really, really good friend. His name is Mehrdad. We used to go to Sac City together. We became roommates. We dated the same girl. Anyways. So there came I'm just joking, but his name is Mehrdad. And so Mehrdad had gotten a girl pregnant. And they got eventually married, partly because her father was a sheriff and he wanted to leave her. And one day he goes to his house and says, if you leave my daughter, you know, I'm a sheriff. I have a lot of power. I will come to your house with my gun and I will shoot you. You got to marry my daughter. And eventually they got married. They got 3 kids, all depressed, by the way. So one day we were sitting, Mehrdad, myself, Hussein, and our teacher, Hussein. And Mehrdad was looking a little worried, and Hussein was asking him, so what's wrong with you? You're not listening tonight, you know? He says, I'm not really quite sure how my life is going to turn out. And Hussein looks at him and says, don't worry. Anke dandan dahad, non dahad. He who has given you teeth will eventually give you bread. Okay. So there are like all these millions of people on this planet and somehow they're surviving. You're not exempt. You too will find a way to survive, And, years pass by and he becomes a city manager in Sacramento. Raking all this money and buying a beautiful house. So there are a couple of things about Anke dandan dahad non dahad. Before I perhaps tell you the inner meaning of this particular saying, let me also tell you another story that comes from Muhammad, the founder or the vehicle through which Islam came about. So there's a guy, he's with his donkey, he hears the call to prayer, it's about noon, he doesn't want to be late, the Prophet is right there praying, and he says, well, should I tie my donkey to this tree or should I just run into the mosque? If I tie it to the tree, it's going to take 10 minutes and then I may miss the prayer. He says, you know what? I have faith that no one's going to steal my donkey. So he runs into the mosque and he prays. He comes out and his donkey is gone. And he's very, 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 very angry. And so he goes to Muhammad and he says, you said faith is all that we need. And Muhammad said, yes, faith is good, but some reason wouldn't be bad either, So the point of Anke dandan dahad or the donkey story is the following. It's good to be religious. It's good to have faith. It's good to plan for the future. But also use some common sense. Common sense in the sense that know that the future is dangerous. It contains elements that you have no control over. I have no doubt that all of you in this class will be successful in some shape or form. But you should also exercise some rationality, which is, understand your culture, understand your society, understand capitalism, understand the vulturousness of the American culture. Take the classes, get the units, go to a 4-year school, get your degree, get a job, and then if you want to be an artist, be an artist. Have faith in your talent. There's nothing wrong with it. But also give yourself a cushion just in case they don't pan out. God gave you a heart to feel, if you want to use that kind of language, and gave you a brain to think. Don't just go with your heart. That's stupid. So, and that's the thing, yeah, you have teeth and there is food out there somewhere, but it's not a bad thing because, you can beg and beg and beg and maybe 8 out of 10 days, someone is going to give you some food. That's not bad, but you're going to have 2 days where you're going to be starving and your kids are going to be starving and you want to make sure those 2 days never visit you. So faith and reason. Get married because you love the guy. Also know that he's an idiot. Right, Terry? So, yes, Dagan. You have, no? Go ahead, it's okay. No? Avi, anything? Yeah. Dagan? Aaron?
We're talking about empathy.
Who?
Empathy. Empathy.
Anthony?
Empathy.
Oh, empathy. I'm just kidding. Yeah, empathy. So, empathy. All right, let's figure out how to do this. Would you call that an empathetic gesture? It really isn't. But they've been in my pocket for like 3 years. Sorry, Abby, I'm just kidding. So, number one, empathy has to do with someone's brokenness. Something happens to you and you're falling apart. In a couple of weeks, Kasara is going to email me saying, can I come to your office? Why? She left me. Who? Who left you? Francois? Where did she go? France. Why? And you can see in her email all the tears that she is shedding. Forgive me. So the point I'm trying to make, the first thing you need to know about empathy is that something has happened to someone. And that something has caused a great amount of intense emotions. Okay. And like we talked about earlier, whenever you have intense emotions, you need a good pair of ears. Okay. It's like a volcano. You can only hold things within for so long. Okay. So there is a person who's been broken. On the outside, there are people, and this is natural, I think, for all of us, and it's something that Jean-Jacques Rousseau had argued, and probably most accurate, which is there is something about us that changes when you see pain in someone. You know, and I don't really know how that happens or why that happens. It's just maybe the organisms that they are. There was this famous story in New York that there was this kid on the bridge about to jump to end his life. And the security officer was walking around, making sure everything's okay, and sees this kid. And as he jumped, he grabs his hand. But the kid was a little heavy, and he was slipping. And the security guard was also slipping over the rail slightly. And the kid looks at him and says, "Let go of me, otherwise you're going to come in there with me. We'll both die." And he says, "Listen, I got 2 kids and I got a wife. I don't want to die. Just come up." He says, "No, I want to end my life." And the guy says, "You go, I go. It's okay." And you can call it this like a messiah complex. It really doesn't matter what title or label you want to give it. But the point is, there is something about us that once in a while is moved so passionately and honestly and earnestly that you're willing to sacrifice your own life. Okay? That I'm like this 13-year-old kid in Iran, and there is this revolution, and I have no problem soldiers shooting at me. Why? Because I am empathetic towards what? The goals of justice and fairness and money for everyone. And women have rights. And this is like 1979, okay? So there is something about us that just, for some strange reason, overcomes the 7 deadly sins. Your life don't matter, your ideas don't matter, nothing about you matters. All you want to do is save, protect this person in front of you, just broke and shattered into 1,000 pieces. Okay? So there is the broken person, there is a human nature that easily is aroused by pain. Unless you just happen to be the sort of temperament that is just damaged. There was a movie that came out some years ago. There are like 3-4 parts to it. I think it's called Hustle or Hostel or something, where people get on a plane or train, they find themselves in certain parts of Russia where they take people, chop them into pieces, or they actually pay to go into a room and chop pieces with like saws and everything. So I'm not talking about psychopaths or sociopaths and those things. Relatively sane people like me and you. And then, so now that all of us in this class have a messiah complex in the sense that we are moved by another's pain, time passes and you end up in a place very much like if you've seen the first Zorro with Anthony Hopkins and Antonio Banderas, where he fought with the mayor, his wife got killed, his kid was taken away from him, he was put in prison, he finds a way to free himself, he finds Antonio Banderas, a drunk, trains him, and then he says, "You need to go rescue the people." And Anthony, or this new Zorro, Banderas says, "Well, you need to come and help me." He says, "No, you got to do this on your own." He says, "Why?" He says, "Listen, I gave my life to my people, and in the end, what did it give me? I got old, my wife died, my kid was taken from me, all I want right now is just my daughter." Okay? And the point I'm trying to make is this: when you're young, you exercise your messiah complex towards anyone who has pain, and that's such a wonderful gift. You know, it's like when you're young, you can date almost anyone out there. It is really a gift. You know, you're not contaminated greatly with biases and experiences. You're not tarnished. You're open to possibilities. As you get older, very much like a gas tank of a car, you run out of energy a little bit. And then you pick and choose the sort of brokenness you can deal with. You know, I'm no longer in a position to change the oil of my car. I used to do it for 20 years. Okay? It's not something I can do anymore. What I can do is maybe plant some flowers. I'm willing to break the ground and go to Home Depot, grab something. I can do that. Okay? And so what you realize is as you age, you begin to be interested in specific kinds of pain. So yesterday, or a couple of days ago, I had a student who came to me and said, "My wife is this and my kids are that." And this like 40-year-old man sat in the middle of the classroom and started crying. I felt absolutely nothing. Now, I wasn't crude and I wasn't disrespectful. But when he asked if he could come to my office so we can talk some more, I said no. Because it's not something I can fix. And it's not something I'm willing to spend my time on. It's not a brokenness that I created. You know? And I can no longer have the energy to just have my ears, be bombarded with stories that I've heard over and over and over again. And another fact is such episodes, they really need a good amount of time to heal themselves. A pep talk is not going to do anything. If you got issues, exercise patience and read some books and be observant, pay attention, be mindful. That's all you can do, okay? And so the point I'm trying to make is it's good to be empathetic, but as you age, you realize the nature of your empathy and how much you're willing to be a victim of it is going to change. So where I am right now is I don't care about your confusion. You're part of life. Life makes all of us confused. If on the other hand you came to class and you came to my office and said, Amir, listen, for the past 5 or 6 weeks being in your class, I've been noticing some changes in the way I think and feel about stuff. And I was thinking and majoring in philosophy. For example, now still I'm not going to take you seriously. I'm not going to give you my time. Right? I don't care about your excuses, and I don't really care if I fail you, and I don't really care if you have to spend another semester taking classes. Those are not my business. You brought this onto yourself, fix it. I'm not here as a righteous Messiah. I refuse to play that game. If on the other hand, I broke you, now I feel responsible. Now I am willing to help you. But even now as I'm getting older, I don't have the energy for that. So is it good to be empathetic in the sense that you're willing to put yourself in another person's shoes, to try to understand their history? It's great. It creates intimacy, it creates experiences you can learn from. But age gives you power in the sense that you could kind of review your background, review your past, see what works, what doesn't work, what takes too much effort. And then you say, and you discern. You say, you know what? I can do this and this and this. All this other stuff, I'm not going to do. Robert De Niro, he's like 95, right? And he has a kid, like 2 months old. He was doing an interview and he said, I've told my companion, I'm not going to pick up the kid. It's too much for my back. So even if the kid cries, I'm just going to look down and say, all right, stop it. I'm not going to bend over. I'm not going to pick you up. You better learn how to stop crying, man. It's a great wisdom to have. Because without it, you're just going to waste a good amount of time. Does it suck that people are in pain? Yeah. Does it suck that people have to repeat a class? Yeah, it sucks. Do you want to give your time to that? Well, if you're stupid, you should. But if you're not, like me, wise, you shouldn't. Richard? Terry? Are you crying? Deegan, yes. Olivia, go ahead.
What brings ignorance?
I'm sorry?
What brings ignorance?
So there are a couple of things, I think, and forgive me, I don't mean to sound arrogant when you guys ask me questions and I say, well, let me answer it. Most often I just wing things and 90% of it is just garbage, 10% maybe something in it. We lose our instinctual abilities very, very early on in life. If you're a kid, like a 2-year-old, you fall from the bike, you just cry. You don't have the element of shame inside you. You just cry, When you get to be like our age, even though he's been wanting to cry, he doesn't cry. So, I'm a man, I'm this, I'm that. So the more you become socialized, the less instinctual you are, okay? So, given the fact that we are not the sort of instinctual animals the way, say, a tiger is, or a rat is, or a guinea pig is, and our social system, and our political system, and our familial system, and our psychological system, they're enormously complicated. It takes a long time to figure things out. I mean, the simplest of things. Okay? So we walk into life in a great amount of darkness. I mean, the prodigal son story is very true. We can't know the value of time. We can't know the value of age. We can't know the value of health. We don't know the value of anything. So you kind of just waste it. And there is nothing wrong in wasting it. Because as long as you're able to waste, at the same time exercise some awareness, you can learn from the things you have wasted. It has taken us a long time to realize you can actually nourish flowers with the shit that comes out of your body. That took us a long time. It's beautiful. So you know what we do as a family? We put in a bag, and I take them to the office. For those of you in this class who ever shit in a bag, bring your shit to me. It turns into compost. The point I'm trying to make is that if you're able to exercise awareness, you can catch yourself when you make decisions in the dark. Now, the other thing you need to understand about ignorance is that the moment you wake up, you make plans. And it's not like you've been here before. This is like your fifth life, and you remember everything from your past life, therefore you're not going to make any mistakes. This is my first marriage. This is my first time having a child. This is my first time actually thinking about things deeply. Are they going to mess up my life? Absolutely. Okay? So, given the fact that we have no choice but to be engaged animals, that we have to make plans, and given the fact that plans require decision-making processes, you have to make decisions. Now, none of us in this class come with a slate background. All of us in this class have a background, a history. That history creates its own biases and prejudices. We all enter life with a great amount of limitations. The difference between you and I is very, very simple. I have lived longer, I've had more experiences, I've learned from those experiences, and I try my best to give those insights to you so you don't make my mistakes. The problem with you simply accepting my insights is that you're only going to be a copycat. And the only way you truly learn in life is you make mistakes, and then you get broken by the decisions you've made, and then you get depressed. Then, if you are lucky, you'll say, let me think about my past. Let me see if I can figure this out. Now, for you to figure out anything to remove ignorance or darkness from yourself, i.e. sin, you need to have teeth to chew the experience. You need to have jaws, strong jaw, to kind of crush the experience, to break it down. You have to have a great digestive system to see what's inside of it. And that's the only way ignorance will disappear. But because we're also the sort of animals that we go from one stage to another stage of our own maturity and evolution, there are certain things that you're ignorant of when you're 2. The things eventually you become wise at the age of 2 are irrelevant when you become age of 5. When you're finished with the age of 5 and you go to a different stage and you're 18 now and you walk into relationships, well, the only relationship you know is the familial kind. You love your mom, you love your dad, you love this, you love that. You love pizza, you love America. Okay, a romantic relationship is very, very different. Can you exercise all the stuff you have from the past? No. It's apples and oranges, night and day. So you go into it, again, without knowing much about it. And every time you get broken in a romantic relationship, there's an insight to be had. Okay? But that means that you have to care enough, be interested enough to kind of process it, examine it, and learn from it. Does that mean that you're not going to repeat the experience? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that you've learned something from it. The application of knowledge or insight or wisdom, that's a different ballgame. Okay? So there are moments where you have insights about things and you're no longer ignorant, but applying what you've learned is difficult because you need, whenever you have any wisdom about anything, that wisdom has a tendency of going against life. If you've failed a few classes, now you know you need to graduate, well, you have cultivated this thing called laziness. You don't take your classes seriously. You don't know how to write. You don't know how to think. But now you want an A in a class. This new desire that has come from you realizing you wasted a lot of time and you no longer want to waste time. It is true that you want to write a great essay, but you have to wrestle with 20 years of sloth or laziness. And you can't do that. And so you will sabotage your insights. You will sabotage your understanding. And that's the way we function. And then when you get to be my age, you sit back and you say, you know, I really fucked up. And you sit in that until one day your child comes home and he says, Dad, I messed up. And then you say, okay, son, sit down. I want to tell you a story. I messed up just the same exact way you did. Let me tell you what happened to me. And you hope that your son by then has ears to hear. So ignorance is just part of who and what we are. There is no escape from it. It's impossible. The only thing that you can hope for is take your ignorance to someone who's been there and who's done that. And hopefully through them, you can gain some insights and then go into life and just apply it. I mean, look, some of the people we have in this room right now, they're teaching philosophy, humanities, religious studies. Whether it's because of me, whether it's because of my classes, because they watched a YouTube clip of Jordan Peterson, none of those things matter. But what happens is, instead of living in Costco with all these aisles with different items, they say, you know what, I'm just going to stay in the aisle that sells philosophy. So the only ignorance that they will ever suffer from, and the only brokenness that they will ever suffer from is, when I go to the class and when I talk, I'm not saying things the right way. I don't know my craft too well. That's the only thing. If, on the other hand, you have no passion about anything and you're just at Costco, you keep spending money and you come out with items only to realize you don't really need them. And that's a heavier price to pay. Choose something you're good at, know that you don't know much about it, immerse yourself in it, live in that darkness for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and eventually you'll get it. And you won't care about the rest of the stuff out there. If that makes any sense. What time is it?
10:16.
Diggin, anything before we go? We have like a second. For those of you who voted for Trump, congrats for getting your man in the White House. Let me know who you are so I can fail you. For those of you who voted for Kamala, well, what can you do? Have a nice weekend. Stay in touch. Take care. Yeah, I got it. So, yeah. Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you, sir. I'll send
Of course. Okay.